Hi, good evening, everybody. We welcome you all to Namaste Workafella, our fifth edition. And this is a very special edition because we are doing a Women's Weekend special. Today, we have a very, very special guest with us called Dr. Rohini Rao. We will be bringing her on in a second. Just wait for a few more people to join. Good evening. Thank you, everyone, for joining. So for those of you who are joining new to us and our page, Workafella is an award-winning premium co-working and office space provider. And we do believe in the work-play, work-life balance. Today, our event is an effort or an initiative to put a highlight and to throw into the spotlight those who are achievers, extraordinary, who put in their efforts and who make a big difference to our society.
Hi, good evening.
And thank you so much. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much.
Yes, how are you doing?
Good.
I hope all is good and yeah, amazing. So I was just telling our viewers that we're going online and it's a very special chat show because this is our first ever online edition of Namaste Workafella, and we always do this to make sure that we throw a light on all our achievers who are doing extraordinary in our society. So we're very, very happy to have you here. So for those of you who don't know Dr. Rohini Rao, I'm just going to go through like a brief of her profile, which is huge because there's so much of achievements laden in it, but I think it's really inspiring for all of us to know. So Dr. Rohini Rao is India's former top women's tailor. She is also a senior resident doctor at Kaveri Medical Hospital. She created history by winning India's first international gold medal by a women's youth team at the Asian Sailing Championship in 2004. She's participated in 9 world championships, winning 6 international medals and 32 national medals, including 8 consecutive national titles in the laser radial. She campaigned also for the 2012 Olympic Games. She is an outgoing curator of the Chennai Hub Global Shapers Community, which is an initiative of the World Economic Forum, and a 2009 TED Fellow. She's also worked as a health researcher with National Geographic Wilderness Project in 2016, where she had to stay in Angola for 3 weeks for a health survey assessment, and she serves as part of the Global Shapers Alumni Advisory Council since 2018. She is also India's first medical clown and trainer. She's working with the Little Theatres Hospital Clowns Troupe since 2015. In 2018, she was a facilitator for 4 international design thinking projects in Ethiopia, Nepal, Singapore, and Kenya. And she's been an international motivational speaker. She's spoken in about 4 TEDx conferences and Y conference. She's acted on stage since the age of 5 and been part of numerous musical theatre productions. She's also a trustee of the Little Theatre, which is a not-for-profit children's theatre organization, and she's been involved in a lot of productions. And she has also acted in numerous stage shows and surprisingly an Italian feature film called Gills at the age of 12. She's also sung playback for a Tamil film called Three Roses, which you all must definitely check out. She has learned Bharatanatyam, jazz ballet, tap, salsa dancing. She also plays the piano and the violin. And after 7 years, she had made a comeback into competitive sailing, where she had formed the all-women sailing team that represented India at the World Championship in 2019. And in March 2020, very recently, she was selected as one of the international delegates at the Global Victoria Business Summit in Melbourne, Australia. And most importantly, she has become a new mom. So, which is amazing. So, thank you so much again for joining us. That was a huge list, but I'm sure that really shows everyone how much of an achiever you really are and why we definitely wanted to feature you with us.
Thank you so much. It really means a lot. Thank you.
Yes. Amazing. Yes, so we've already gotten a lot of beautiful comments. Master of all trades, absolutely. Yes. Yeah. So that was just a brief snapshot that I was reading out, but I would really like to know your personal view on it. I mean, how was the journey like to you, and doing so much and everybody calling you a woman achiever? How was the whole journey?
I think I'll take up on one of the viewers' comments of being a master of all trades. I love the connotation because growing up, it was always the jack of all trades, master of none slogan that was given to me. And it was always a very negative connotation towards it, you know. And I think it was something that I lived with for a very long time because I love doing different things. You know, my mother made me do different things in terms of music, art, dance, sport, you name it. But then I always felt like, oh, okay, other people think that I won't do well. But the point was I was doing well and I enjoyed doing everything and I didn't want to choose, just one thing in the future. So I think it was something that not many people understood. And it was only when I got older that I realized that, you know, there are people who can be generalists and who can be good at multiple things. And you need some people like that in this world because with a scenario like this, in the future, we don't know what our future jobs are going to be looking like. And I think it's important that you equip yourself with multiple skills to use in whichever area you choose to. So that was the idea.
Right, absolutely wonderful. Thankful to your mom really for encouraging you into so many different initiatives. That's great. Which brings me to a question. Since you say that, yes, of course, being a jack of all trades was something which is viewed as negative. But I feel that it is particularly so when it comes to women because we are not really encouraged to do multiple things, especially, for example, if I take a background like yours, where you're doing something as serious as medicine on one side, and then you're also a sailor, you're winning world championships, and then you're also into theater. So these are very different fields altogether. So has there been any stereotypes which were thrown at you that you kind of managed to break, or, you know, did you see this very commonly of people, you know, around you who have been stopped from pursuing what they wanted just because of this particular stereotype?
Absolutely. In fact, sailing is one of those sports where you're out in the water in the sun for hours together. So I remember when I started sailing at the age of 10, even at that time, I had a couple of friends who were sailing with me, and some of the girls, they ended up stopping sailing because their parents and grandparents were worried about them getting tanned, worried about them getting hurt and cut and bruised, and they literally used to tell them like, who will you get married to later? Who's going to look at you later if you're going to become dark and tan? And that was something, touchwood, I never faced because I had very supportive family, and they were really happy with everything I did, and I just couldn't understand why there were some people who looked at that stereotype. Luckily, I didn't grow up with that stereotype. I was competing against the men because sailing is dominated by the army and the navy men, and I had to compete against them because there were not that many women sailors at that point. And I never looked at it as, oh, I'm beating the men, it means I'm really great. I just looked at them as fellow competitors, and I think that was what was very healthy for me. But for everyone around, they were like, oh my God, it's a girl beating, a civilian girl beating the armed forces, so especially men. So I think, it was different for them.
Absolutely. So, I wondered if your achievements in sports have kind of helped you also in your professional life, the kind of let's say work ethics, in terms of work ethics, or just, the mindset that you had formed. Had that helped you also when you were, let's say, coming back from a championship and then you had to go, for your actual shift at work? So, how did these two work?
So I feel like every child should be engaged in sports, in the arts, because music, dance, theater, a lot of that really, builds you up as a whole, all-round human being. But sports in particular teaches you some things that nothing else can teach you apart from life itself, and I think it's almost like in sport you get a concentrated version of what things that are not in your control. So there are a lot of these things that would happen in life, but sport makes it happen very quickly. So and if you are taught that at a very young age, it's I think it's a really good skill to have. And I think that's what gave me the freedom. We have to understand that children, even though they are really young, all they want is independence. Right from the time they are really tiny tots trying to eat by themselves, was giving me a sort of independence that nothing else could have given me, growing up. Like, you don't get a license to drive a car, but I was given, the chance to sail my boat at the age of 10 by myself. So there was nobody with me, nobody, just people telling me, my coach telling me what to do once in a while before the race. But otherwise, it was just me. I made the decisions. I decided what I wanted to do, where I wanted to go, and how I wanted to perform. And so I had to deal with all the grief. So I think it really helps you when it comes to work. Like you had mentioned, like with medicine for me, I think it was, especially when you're in a team sport, it's how to manage people, how to manage teams, how to be a leader. All of those things definitely, come up with sport for sure.
Amazing. That's great to hear, because we should definitely encourage a lot of women also to join in on sports, because like you said, it really builds a lot of very important life skills. And that was amazing to hear from you. So when it comes to your career as a medical, professional, senior resident doctor at the hospital, in that case, have you seen any sort of biases or prejudices against women? Because you see a lot of women either, not really encouraged to work, let's say, post their marriage, or maybe not take up something very hectic, because let's say if you have to work long hours, then women are generally not really encouraged to participate in anything that works. So in terms of work or your workspace, have you noticed anything like that?
So it's really funny that you say that in terms of medicine, because actually women make up most of the workforce in the healthcare industry. But if you notice, there are very few women in managerial positions in these healthcare, departments. So, in fact, our managing director at Kaveri Hospital, he has actually taken up, a stand saying that he was going to get, I think, up to 30 or 33% of, women in managerial positions in the hospital, because when it comes to it, women are the largest force, like be it the nurses, be it the doctors, it's mostly women, and it's only men at these managerial spots telling, us what to do. So I, touch wood, have been very lucky, extremely lucky to be working in a hospital like Kaveri Hospital, because they've been very inclusive and they've been very, encouraging of me, because like you mentioned, I've traveled a lot, during my work, during my studies, so I remember joining the hospital saying, listen, I will get invited to these international conferences and other opportunities, and I would really like to take these opportunities, and I hope I would be, allowed to. And, I'm really lucky that they gave me that leeway to actually attend these conferences, even though, I would say that I was either representing them or doing something on their behalf as well. But it's not heard of, So I think the biggest thing that I learned is you don't get something unless you ask for it. And I think that's something a lot of women need to know, that it's okay to ask. What is the worst that can happen? They might say no. But if you don't ask, then your answer is always going to be no. So I think women need to know that, women and men, I think it goes both ways. But I think more so for women, they feel very embarrassed or very, scared to ask for what they really want. In terms of even, let's say, for example, maternity leave, or, anything that a women-specific, reason to, ask their employer, I think it's important that you ask.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. Like you rightly said, it's very difficult or challenging for women to actually, let's say, speak up at the workplace, or talk about how they want something, and then you have actually demonstrated that in action. You have shown how it is possible to get what you want only if you ask for it. That's great. When it comes to the workspace, like you said, if more women start speaking up about really what they want or what they would like to be encouraged or backed up by, it would really show a difference. So how do you think, women could be more encouraged to do that? Firstly, in terms of, their own mindset, is there something that they can work on to make sure that they do not lose out on opportunities just because they're a little apprehensive of whether they should speak up about it. So what do you think that a woman could possibly do when they are in a
So,
situation?
I mean, I think that's when childhood and how you are brought up really matters, because if you're growing up in an encouraging environment, that is where your parents are very encouraging, they don't differentiate between your brother and, as the boy needs to do this, the girls can only do this, you can't think of anything else. I think that sort of an environment is very, very important when you start at that stage, because then you know that, you can go anywhere. If your parents have given you that encouragement right from day one, who else can tell you no? I mean, even if somebody says no,
Right.
you don't care at that point. So I feel like a lot of people are afraid of hearing the answer no. And I think that's something because it is inculcated in us right from the time we are young, that if someone says no, means that they either are personally against you, or they don't like you, or they don't want to encourage you. But sometimes people can say no for various reasons, that maybe at that point it didn't work out. Maybe for that moment it's a no. But they don't ask again. And you don't realize that sometimes if you ask again a couple of days or couple of months or couple of years later, the answer may not be no at that time. So I think men also, I keep including the men, because I feel like a lot of the times, we single the men out thinking that all men are encouraged, all men are, getting to do whatever they want. But I feel like people in general
Right.
can be from different backgrounds and be going through different struggles. So if you are one of those people who, are afraid of asking, who are afraid of taking new opportunities, try and think about where that's coming from. If it has been inculcated in you as a child, if you're afraid to ask for what you want, if you, were discouraged, if it's something that you are afraid. In fact, maybe everyone around you is encouraging, everyone is saying, go and do it, but you are afraid. Sometimes I feel
Right.
like you are your worst enemy sometimes, because unless, you ask for something, the other person doesn't even know that you want it, So I think that's something that people need
Yes,
to look
absolutely.
at.
Right, definitely. So when you mentioned the point about the men, I think we got a green card, so that's great. They are definitely feeling very included, right? Wonderful. Yeah, that's very true, especially about saying no. I mean, we kind of assume anything before actually going forward with it. Absolutely. Okay, so I want to take you back to like the time where you decided to come back into sailing and you wanted to get a team together. So that is definitely for me a big display of leadership about how you were able to convince all those women get back into it, especially after you yourself had taken quite a long break. So how did that happen, and why did you decide to get back into sailing again? How did that thought of building a team, becoming a leader, leading these people towards something, how
So
did this
sometimes a lot of the times I refrain from talking about the sad things, the difficulties, but I sometimes feel like it's important for, me to talk about it as well, because not everything is rosy, happy, easy. For example, I mean, balancing medicine and sailing was probably the most difficult thing I'd ever have to do in my life. So if you ask me if I do it again, I'd probably say yes, but it was really difficult when I went through it. I took almost 3.5 years longer to finish my MBBS degree, because I was, campaigning for the Olympics and doing international sport at the same time. I was probably the only athlete in India who was studying in a government college and taking part in international events representing the country. So it was not heard of. Not many people, even thought it was possible, let alone me thinking it was possible. But I was adamant. I said that, just 3 months after before my board exams was when I won the Asian gold medal. And so that's when I said, okay, you know what, now I'm going to try and do medicine. And when I got into medicine, people thought, oh, so now you're going to stop sailing, right? And I couldn't imagine that, because
Right.
it was just the beginning of my career. So I was very adamant that I was going to make it work. I wanted to make sailing and doing my medicine work. Were there times that I wanted to quit? Yes, there were about almost 2-3 times where I wanted to quit medicine. I felt like I was not good enough. I wouldn't be able to do it, because every day you'll see my seniors will be just sitting with their books studying throughout, and I was not that sort of a person at all. So also for people who are watching, I almost failed in maths. I just passed my math exam, so I'm not like this great prodigy or anything like that. I got 86% in my board exams, which helped me get in through the sports quota into medicine. So that was my journey. Now, for the 2012 Olympics, I lost in the qualifiers by one spot. To represent the country. I would have been the first Indian woman going into the Olympic Games. But there were a lot of politics after that, the government, federations rather didn't send my name. So in every sport, it's there in every sport, but I just want people to know that it is there. So, it's unfortunate that we all have to win and we all have to do things in spite of, the federation and other things around you. So I was very negative in the sense that I didn't want to continue sailing after that because I had given up everything. I had done so much to try and qualify, but in the last minute, even though I did everything I could, it was taken away from me. So I decided to come back and finish my MBBS because I knew that nobody can take that away from me apart from myself. And then I did my master's in internal medicine. And a lot of people used to ask me, are you going to get back into sailing, And it was something that I always said that I will never say no. I will never say never. And it's true. 7 years later, I had an opportunity where the president of the sailing club in Chennai was saying that, listen, there's a world championship coming up and, I think it'll be really good for you to get back. And it's not going to go through the federation, so, you don't need to get into all those politics again. And I had never stepped into a boat for almost 7 years. So it was, a crazy idea. Mm-hmm. But as it went forward, I just got really excited, because I had to form a team of 6 women. So it was me plus 5 others. And,
right.
To find these women from different parts, there was one from Hyderabad, there was, about 3 from Chennai, and one I had to, source. One was not even a sailor. She was a swimmer but very into fitness. So I put her onto the boat. We trained her. And for about 2 or 3 of them, they have never sailed an international event. So it was amazing. I did a crowdfunding campaign. I got the money. We got a couple of sponsors. And we went to Spain for the World Championship in 2019. And I didn't expect to do that well. I thought, okay, we'll just participate. That itself will be a great thing. But we finished 4th. We finished 4th in the World Championship in the all-women's category. And that was something unbelievable. I think... I think don't put limitations to yourself because you never know what is going to happen and how things are going to turn out. So I just want to thank Rashika. Dr. Rashika Khan is my colleague and she's very sweet and saying very sweet things to me.
Well, thank you, Dr. Rashika, for joining. We're very happy you joined and you're leaving such beautiful comments for us. Right. Yeah, I mean, that's great. I think that totally displays a definition of leadership. So, as you know, the theme for this year for the International Women's Day is all about how women should step up when it comes to leadership, whether it's in their professional sector, whether it comes to their health, taking ownership of their health, all different aspects of their life. So I want to know, what does leadership mean to you? I mean, how would you define it? Because everybody has their own definition, or they, somehow they relate it to a story that kind of, shows their leadership in that moment, because we all define it in different ways. So for you, I would want to know that how do you look at it?
To me, actually, leadership is a quality that you end up discovering about yourself sometimes when you are given an opportunity and when you're given or put in a position of responsibility and power. And that is the true, test for what kind of a leader, what kind of a person you are. Because, I mean, as the saying goes, right, you give a person power and responsibility and, then you see who the person really is. And I feel that, unless you are given that opportunity, unless you take that opportunity, unless you're put in that position, you will never know if you are actually capable of doing it or not. So I feel like if anybody's hearing this, if everyone's saying, it can be anything. It can be saying that, hey, listen, I'm going to take care of the house. I'm going to take care of all the finances, all the, the things that need to go on in the house. That itself is leadership. that is taking ownership, leadership, responsibility for, your family. But at the same time, it's so important, like you had mentioned, it's so important to also take care of yourself, because a lot of the times with women, they want to prove themselves and prove to other people, how good or whatever they are, that they forget that sometimes you just need to, prove to yourself and take care of yourself in the process, And I think that's something that unfortunately, again, we see right from the time we are younger, how our parents, our mothers especially, they will make sure everyone else is eating first and then they'll eat. Even if there's nothing, they'll let everyone else in the family eat and then they won't have anything. Then if somebody is ill, and even if they are ill, they don't care about themselves, they take care of the other person. So you're seeing all of this in your house. So when you grow up, you end up feeling that, to be a good woman or be a good mother or wife, I should do the same thing. But I really feel that I think things are changing. I think women are also understanding that unless they take care of themselves, they're not going to be able to take care of their family and the rest of their, work and everything else. So, if anyone's listening, please, if you have crossed the age of 30, please get a medical health checkup. Do a frequent check at least once in a couple of years. It's so important to be preventive than, do something after you have something or get something. So even if it's eating healthy and, exercising, please start actually in your teens. A lot of people wait until they're 30, 40 to start, but actually all the damage has been done much earlier. So I just wanted to plug that in, because as a doctor, I end up going for a lot of these health camps and, corporate camps and all of that. And it's really sad to see all these young men and women in their 40s, having such high blood pressure and anxiety and stress. And it's really sad. It's a lifestyle that has to be changed. And I think that's something everyone needs to take ownership of.
Absolutely, for sure. And I'm happy that you added that in, so that at least viewers are aware of what they should be doing. So I also want to talk a little bit about how you got into this, about being a medical clown. So how did that happen? And as you mentioned, it's the first. You're the first medical clown who's also a doctor in India. So how did you get this inspiration? And I know that you've also been very very closely associated with the Little Theatre Association, and you've done a lot of different plays and all that. So how did you become a clown, and how does
so a lot of the things that I've done in my life, I have to thank and blame my mom. So my mom is the founder of the Little Theatre, and she started this almost 30 years ago. So when I was almost just 5 years old was when I started Little Theatre with the workshops and all of that. And what ended up happening was, because I've been in the arts, I love music, I love dance, I've been very active in theatre from a very young age. It was something that I think was waiting to happen. Arts in healthcare. It's a novel idea. It's something that has just only recently started getting popular with creative arts therapy and all of these sort of alternative therapies that have come up. So medical clowning is actually not just something that where somebody just wears clown makeup and entertains patients and make them laugh. That's not what we are. It's an actual training course that you have to go through. So we were trained by this medical clown from New York who had come down to train 13 of us as part of the Little Theatre troupe. And, they teach us about the protocols that you have to follow in a hospital. And because I'm a medical doctor, I knew a lot about the diseases and the protocols already. Then you're taught about how it's a very difficult concept to explain, but I'll try and explain it in as, few lines as possible. If anyone has watched Patch Adams, which had Robin Williams as the lead, it's actually based on a real person in America called Dr. Patch Doherty Adams. He is the one who started modern day hospital clowning. And what he did was, he said that just medicines are not going to treat a person. You have to treat the person as a whole in terms of his emotions, in terms of one of the biggest things that is taken away from you as a patient in a hospital is your sense of control. You don't have control over your body. You don't have control of what when you wake up, what you wear, nothing. Or the doctors and the nurses are telling you what to do every single time. You may be a boss in your office, but you have no say whatsoever when you come to a hospital. And that can actually be very deteriorative to a person when they're put in that kind of a situation, because it's a very negative environment already. And there's anxiety, there's so many terrible things that is going to just make your disease and your everything just that much worse, and it's not helpful in terms of getting healthy. So hospital planning comes in, where they actually try and give control back to the patient. We use distraction therapy. Laughter is one of the tools that we use. So there are a lot of things that we do, especially for the pediatric age group and the geriatric age group. Those are the main groups that we cater to. So the Little Theatre does hospital clowning sessions in the government children's hospital in Egmore. And we have done a few in a couple of private hospitals and the cancer hospital as well.
Mm-hmm. Wow, that's really amazing to hear, and I'm sure that has really impacted a lot of people, especially like you say, when people are not in control. At least a smile is the least that you can really give to a person, when they're in that situation. So that's really amazing. I would also want to know about your work as part of the Global Shapers community, and has that translated into some sort of actionable, a process that you've started or a project that you've started that has really impacted people? So what is the kind of work that you do?
Sure. I think there was someone who wanted to know a little bit about how to get more information on hospital clowning. Please follow the Little Theatre Chennai page. I'm just going to write that in the comments, and you can get more information there. So just wanted to tell you that. When it comes to the Global Shapers community, that was something that was, again, just out of the blue. That year when I lost the qualifiers to the Olympic Games, I got an opportunity to become the founding curator of the Chennai Hub Global Shapers community, and I was invited to Geneva for the annual curators meeting. That was something unbelievable. We were in the headquarters of the World Economic Forum, and to hear about their novel idea of, what they basically were saying was, the World Economic Forum, they usually make a lot of surveys, they advise a lot of corporates, they advise a lot of governments, but they are not directly involved in action or doing anything, in action, right? It's all just talk, it's all just surveys. So what they wanted to do was get young individuals, so between the age of 20 to 35, from different parts of the world, to think globally but act locally, because you have so much contact and so much so many resources when you all are connected together, that you will be able to do a lot more actionable things in your own locality or own society. So that's what was the whole idea of the whole Global Shapers community. And the main thing that I did was get as diversified group of people together. I had no idea what was going to happen, but I knew that the more different and diverse that people that I get into the group, something is going to happen, right? So I remember the first year I got about 15 people, and we slowly built it up to 20, 25. And it was just like, very casual conversations where we were getting, ideas thrown at, okay, I'm a IT professional, I can do this. I'm a doctor, I can do this. I'm a, theater professional, I can do this. So there were a lot of ideas that were thrown around. And out of which there were a few really key projects that really blossomed. And one was the Kabadiwala Connect project. It won an international prize from Coca-Cola and the climate, project. It won, I think 50,000 francs, some ridiculous number like that. And that the person who joined and made that project has now stopped his, regular job, and this has become his regular job. He's actually made Kabadiwala Connect so big. It's advised, governments in France. It's even in India. We are, the government has given them awards for, the work they're doing. So it makes me really feel so humble and happy that I was able to play a small role in just getting this team together and to see them grow. Another one was the Schools of Equality, and this was started by a lawyer, and she was basically talking about the fact that people end up becoming, leaders in different positions, like, for example, a judge or a teacher, and you are influencing a lot of your decisions based on what the stereotypes that you've grown up with, right? Because you can't change that. You can't change that suddenly if you've been taught a certain way right from the childhood, that this is how men are supposed to be, or this is how this is supposed to happen. So she wanted to do something about changing the stereotypes at a school or childhood level, and that was something so beautiful, because she did that in government schools in Andhra Pradesh, in Chennai, and a couple of other places where they break stereotypes. They're constantly challenging stereotypes and getting young people to, have debates and conversations regarding these topics that are very taboo, very, controversial, and just to make sure that they grow up into better human beings, because the future is the children, and I think that's what, she wanted to do. So those are just a couple of projects that I thought I'd talk about.
Wonderful. Yeah, definitely. And I just wanted to share that when you mentioned about Kabadiwala Tanik, so we did have him as our guest for our previous edition. Yes, so, like you said, we are also all about supporting a lot of our local projects, local initiatives, local ventures. So that is why our section of Namaste Workafala definitely wants to highlight a lot of these projects and the people behind these projects, making them successful. So yes, we did have Siddharth, and it was a wonderful.
Siddharth is amazing, and I can also plug in. He's also my cousin, so it makes it even better.
Oh, okay. Wonderful. It's amazing to know. So you have a very talented family. We just found out. Yeah, wonderful. So there was also another project that I had seen in your bio, which was the ADIA project, which won the Gender Equality Award at Unleash 2018. So could you also tell us a little bit about that project?
Unleash was, again, a very interesting project that I came about. And again, I'll just put it out there. The only reason I get in, to know about these projects is because of the communities that I'm a part of, right? So, and I have no problems applying for everything. I don't care. If I get in, I get in. If I don't, I don't. So don't be afraid of putting yourself out there. Yes, I'm a medical doctor, but it doesn't mean that I have to stick to just my domain. So that's why I got into, human-centered design. I got into a lot of design thinking projects and all of those things. Unleashed was one of those things that I applied for. And it was a very novel idea, because they were talking about the sustainable development goals. So they were, in connection with the UN. And their idea was to get 1,000 talents, 1,000 people between the age of 20 and 40 or something like that, from all over the world to come together in one place. And I think it was for 5 days or 6 days, work on different projects under these different sustainable development goals. And I was naturally very interested in health. So I, sustainable SDG 3, so I was part of that group. And what I really loved about that whole experience was I got to work with a doctor from Senegal, a dietitian artist from Thailand. There was a corporate person from Malta and another one from the UK, Germany. And so there were 5 of us working together on this group. And, you have to understand, 1,000 talents. So if you make everyone go get into groups, there were 200 projects, and out of which we were selected for the, gender equality, this thing. So there were only 5 prizes, and we were one of the teams who won. So it was using the design thinking strategy of how to, go find out what the problem is, how to, deal with, the pros and the cons, the feedback, and finally come up with a solution at the end of it. And to tell you the truth, the first 2 days we thought of a project, and then we completely scrapped the idea. We had an argument. We were almost breaking up the team. And then finally, I decided to become a facilitator, because I had already done facilitation before. I had joined as a participant, but I ended up becoming a facilitator at that point to kind of, save the team. In the last 3 days, we came up with this idea, which was basically looking at non-communicable diseases, and diabetes being one of the biggest, threats to countries, especially like India. where by 2030 we're supposed to become the world capital of diabetes, which is not a great thing to be proud of. We chose that.
It's a scary statistic.
And we've decided that we were going to, how you have like these health workers that, the Anganwadi workers, that actually go to different communities and, help diagnose, illnesses and give them medicines. So we were trying to find out if we could get, a physical education Anganwadi kind of a woman who would actually eventually do physical exercises within their communities. And it was quite interesting because there would be incentives, there would be they have to pay like either 1 rupee or something, just to have like a membership of women taking care of their physical fitness and making sure that they're doing something to take care of themselves. And that was our idea, and that was the project. We had a whole plan of how we were going to sort it out. And I think the doctor from Senegal has implemented it back home in his country. I'm trying to get the resources here to see how we can do it here, but that's how we won that project.
Oh boy, wow. Congratulations on that. And I really think that's a very fascinating idea and much needed. We don't really place that much of importance on just a simple exercise, how the wonders it can actually do for your body. So I would really look forward to seeing it implemented somewhere here in action, and then probably we can have you back again to talk about it. So yeah, that would be amazing. And also, I mean, how do you really manage all of this together? Like, really, what is your productivity hack? How does your day look like? And how do you even take out time to take care of yourself? Because, of course, like you said, self-care is such an important part of your routine. So just like take us through how
again, I'm going to go back to my childhood. I think I've seen I have very strong women models at home, be it my grandmother and my mom. I've seen my mom constantly busy, but at the same time, she, was always there when we needed her. She would, cook meals. She would, be in her sari, walk out for meetings, meet governments, do a whole bunch of things at the same time. So I just grew up thinking that was the norm. I grew up thinking that was what, everyone was like. I didn't know that this was the exception. And I think that is really powerful. It's a very powerful image that you can give your child just by example. So I want to tell, women, parents out there, you have no idea how much your child is observing, how much they are observing, how much they are absorbing just by seeing how you live your life. And I think you need to, tell them that the world is your oyster and that you can do whatever you want, because in actuality that is true. And for people who say, oh no, but I don't have time to do this, I don't have time to do that, I want to ask you, how badly do you want to do it? Because if you really want to do something, trust me, you will make time for it. And I think that's what I've always lived by, and I always, tell people who tell me like, oh no, but I don't have time to work out, or I don't have time to do this, or don't have time to do that. I think it just goes down to how much do you really want to do it. Right.
Yeah, definitely. And then seeing how that has really worked out for you, it can be said that it is possible. So for sure. So you do believe in the fact that a woman can do it all? Like she can excel at both her personal life as well as her professional
Absolutely.
life.
And again, I'm going to bring in the men here. I feel like even the men, unfortunately, they're given so much, flack for saying, oh no, you have to only do this. You have to be the one earning. You have to be the one, going out and working your ass at night till 5, and then come home and not spend time with your children and, all of that. I feel like anything is possible if you can communicate openly, if you can have an open dialogue, find out where you can fit things in. The human beings that's what human beings are. We are problem solvers. We actually, if you put us in a situation, we will figure things out. And I think all of us are just in a very, safe place where, I'm happy here. I don't want to do anything, extra. And I think that's where people, people think that it's easy doing what we're doing, but it's not. There is a lot of hardship. A lot of the times I fight for what I want. In fact, I'll have conversations with my husband and, my family and say, listen, I want to do something. How can we make it work? How can we make this happen? And then, it's the same thing. If my husband wants to do something and he says, hey, listen, I need your help, then I can be there for him as well. And I think that's something that really needs to be an open conversation, and that you don't have any regrets, because that is something I've like. If there's any motto I live by, it's definitely do everything you can and not to have any regrets, because that is something you don't want to grow old with. You don't want to grow old with and have regrets that you couldn't do something, or you wish you had done something and you couldn't.
Right, very true. And that's a really wonderful thought. I think that's where your design thinking mind also comes into the play, where you're like, okay, I'm going to figure out a solution for this and I will get through. So that's really nice. And I hope that's a very important takeaway that, our viewers are seeing, or whoever's, actively commenting. I do hope you take this away for sure. Also, congratulations on becoming a new mother. And I just want to know, like, how has your routine really, has it changed up? Have things, how different have things become? And how are you managing your, work, as well as, of course, taking care of your
I think I'm going to be a little unpopular here, but the pandemic couldn't have come at a better time, because I had my baby in September, and you had mentioned in my bio that I'd gone to Australia in March, and I was already 3 months pregnant by then. And when I came back was when everything went into lockdown. I'd got to work for a week or 10 days until just before everything went into a lockdown. I know for a fact that I may not have taken a break ever. I would have probably been working, until my 9th month probably. So this was like a forced break that I had to take, and I'm so glad I did, because it just let me reconnect with myself. It made me reconnect with my family, with my husband. Because it is a big step. I don't think. I think a lot of women, even though they have, children, they forget about how much they went through and what you had to go through to actually, have that pregnancy, have that birth, and what all you did after that. That I feel like a lot of women just make it chalega, like, it's very normal because everyone is having babies. It's very normal. But I don't think it is. It is something that is very special. It's very, challenging for a family, for a woman, for the family in general. And that is something that I really had time to look at. So I had time to reflect, and I had time to see what women actually go through. And I have huge respect for women who have gone through, childbirth, whatever way they did. I went through a natural birth, even though I'm a doctor. I actually had a midwife deliver my baby, and it was no medicine. So I actually walked in. I didn't have any injections, no drips, nothing. I was walking around during my labor, and it was probably the most beautiful, painful experiences I've ever had. I know no lies there. It is, if anyone says that it wasn't painful, they're lying. But I think when you're primed with the education and the birth education that you're given, there were a lot of things as a doctor that I didn't know about natural birth and about labor. And I think it's something that every couple should go through. I think you should go through these birth classes, these Lamaze classes. It teaches you so much, because my husband is a non-medical person. He's an actor. So he didn't know anything about anything. So I think this was so useful for him as well, because I didn't want to make any decisions in the end. So he's the one who took all the decisions, and he was the one who kind of, took care of me and my little one for the first 2 weeks. It was only both of us. We traveled from Chennai to Kochi to a birth village, a birthing center, and during the pandemic. So it was something crazy, but I really wanted to enjoy this whole birth, because I don't know when or if I will ever have another baby, but this is something that I really wanted to do. And in terms of how it's changed, I just feel like, a little baby can bring, I've seen how much joy she's brought to everyone in the family, be it us, be it my parents, anyone who comes to visit. So it's a boon. I'm just really grateful and really appreciative. That's all it is.
Absolutely. And I know that you actively try to share whatever insights that you have, whatever that you've learned on your journey with your audience. So I think that in itself is really helpful to a lot of women. And I'm sure you would have gotten a lot of feedback from them, a lot of, messages from the women themselves saying that how useful your whole.
Yeah, I think it was. So I think it was basically because I realized as a medical doctor itself, I didn't know half the things that were spoken about, during pregnancy and all the things I learned. So I think that was just something I decided, what, I'm going to share whatever I know, because I don't want to have people as lost as, I could have been if I didn't get all that information.
Absolutely, and it's amazing that you're doing that. You are doing it constantly, and that's really helping a lot of people. So we have a question from one of the people watching. So he says, Dr. Rohini, what is your take on Tea and Ka?
I think it was very cute, the movie. I think it was really nice. But like I said, I think it has to be a give and take. I don't think a man has to be the one who, earns. I don't think the woman has to be the one who earns in the family. I feel like it's a give and take. There are times when, I might be more successful than my husband. There are times where he might be more successful than me. And I think it's all about just supporting each other and making sure that, like I had mentioned earlier, that there are no regrets. I don't want later to, look back and say, hey, listen, you didn't give me the support or opportunity to, to enhance my career. Or I don't want him to turn back and say that, because of you, I couldn't do something. So I feel like it's a constant give and take. It's, where your priorities are, because that is something that I learned very the hard way, because if your priorities are very skewed when it comes to your relationship, it can get very difficult. So no relationship is easy. It's constant change. It's a constant argument trying to figure out what is working for both of you, because nobody should be taken for granted. And I think that is something that all couples need to remember, not to take your other partner for granted, because they can very well feel like that they don't want to do this anymore and that it's not working for them, and they're just going to be very bitter and filled with regret. So that's something that we've actively made sure that we never take each other for granted, and we're thankful for whatever we do. So thanks for that, Ganesh.
Absolutely. So I just right. So I wanted to ask you an interesting question. So, you mentioned your husband is an actor, and of course, we've also seen him on screen. So, is there any interesting experience that you'd like to share that you had with him? Let's say maybe a funny incident or something that, you experienced.
Every day is a funny experience with him. I mean, if you see his Instagram page, you'll know what kind of a clown I married. But what I think is really nice about the fact that it's going to sound really cliche and romantic or whatever you're going to call it, but I did marry my best friend, and I think it's something that I'm again very grateful for, because we've known each other we were classmates ever since UKG in Chettinad Vidyashram. So it was something that I never thought that I was going to end up with him, but it was something that eventually happened after college, after he had his relationships, I had my set of relationships. We finally got together, and we've been together for almost 12 years now. And married for, not 4, but 5 years. But it's... the thing is, I think what is really nice is that he's not afraid to, be himself. And I think it's something that is a lovely quality that I, really admire. Because a lot of the times you grow up thinking, oh no, what will other people say? What will other people think? I need to be a certain way. I need to do a certain thing. And he came along, almost like he doesn't care about what anybody says or how anybody thinks of him. And I think it's very endearing, and it's a nice realization for me that it's actually okay. In the end, you need to live your life the way you want to, because if you keep living for what other people are going to think of you and what other people are going to, say about you, then you're not living your life. You're living on other people's terms and not yours. So I think I've definitely learned that. Funny incident. I keep threatening him, saying that I sometimes shoot some funny dance things that he does at home, and I keep threatening him, saying that I'm going to post, one of his dances as a reel to show his followers what he really does at home. So I don't know. Maybe one day when if he says something and I win an argument, maybe I will.
Yeah, so that's really entertaining to watch. That's amazing. That's amazing. So it's, you both are like such achievers in your own field. I mean, he's doing extremely well. You're, of course, have so much, that we've actually gone through. And I mean, it's really amazing to have heard all of this in your own words, because obviously you read something about somebody, but when they actually tell you about it, I think
it's like my husband is actually listening to my life for once. Yes. He usually never listens to my life because he says like, anyway, I know everything that you're talking about anyway, so he usually never listens. But I will post it one day.
Yes, I think all our people, I think our community is quite happy that he's here. Joining us, thank you, and we've been saying good things about you, so it's all good. Amazing, yeah. So I mean, just to kind of like bring it to a close, I want to know how what do you plan on achieving further? Like, I know it's not something that you really think about and you work towards, but is there something that you would really want to work towards, or are you actively trying to work towards a project right now? Like you said, I mean, you're definitely not a person who's doing only one thing for a very long period of time, and I think we've just figured that out obviously through this conversation. So is there something that you're looking at doing? Is there something new that you would want to try?
So I mean, I think what you had really mentioned it, absolutely correctly, because I remember my managing director of Kaveri Hospital having this conversation with me. Where do you see yourself in 5 years? And I really couldn't answer that question. It's a question that is something I sometimes don't know what I'm doing, next week, next month. Having said that, I do, like to plan for my future in the sense that I want to open as many opportunities as I can. So I would either look out for opportunities, I would apply for things, and sometimes taking opportunities is not as easy as it seems, because you need to compromise on certain things, make yourself available to take that opportunity to actually do, those things. It's not that as easy as people think, because a lot of people look at me and say, oh, you're so lucky that you were able to do this, or you were so lucky that you were, able to go, for the National Geographic expedition. I said, no, it's not about luck. I actively worked to make sure that I could do it, and I think that's something that not many people realize. I think for me, it's a lot of people have asked me to actually write a book on all of the things that I've learned about, pregnancy and all of the things that I've done in my life. In fact, I wrote I think a 5,000 word essay of sorts on Facebook about my 10 years, of my life. And I think that is something that I never thought I would do, but I just felt like it was so cathartic that I just wanted to write. I don't know. Maybe I might write a book. Maybe. Now that I'm saying it live, it might actually happen. This is the first time I'm actually saying it out, like out loud. But maybe. Hopefully.
Yeah. That's amazing. If you do get around to doing it, I think for everyone, this is where you heard it first. So that would be great. Yes, superb. And finally, do you have any last message that you want to give out to young girls? Because I do see quite a few young girls who have joined us here today, especially who are looking into, doing so much in their life. Like you said, not to rely on luck, but to actually go forward, plan and grab that opportunity. So is there a tip that you would like to give them, or just a way that they can, go ahead with this?
So I think, I think I've given everyone an idea of the fact that you can do a lot of things, but there are a lot of things that are not in your control. So the one thing that I go by is, everything happens for a reason. And it's only when even really bad things happen, or when things, don't go your way, and, it's taken you to a different path. When you look back, you will probably say, hey, because that didn't happen, I'm here today, or I'm doing certain things today. So don't look at anything as a setback or a negative thing that happens. I feel like everything happens for a reason, and most of the time it's for the best. So constantly remember that no matter what happens in your in your career, in your life, in anything that you set your mind to. So yeah.
Absolutely. All about connecting the dots.
Absolutely.
Wonderful. Yeah. So, so I think we will kind of close up our live here. And honestly, thank you so much for a wonderful conversation and just to hear all of this, your stories in your own words. We've also had a lighter moment. Your husband came in the chat. I mean, we got a slight glimpse of him here also. So that was really fun. And thank you again for doing this with us. We really do hope that we would be able to collaborate, like this over the long run. And I'm sure if that book comes out, we would love to also kind of have another conversation around that.
That's so sweet. Thank you so much, Aishwarya. I really had a wonderful time. So thank you so much, and thank you all for joining in.
Absolutely. Thank you everyone for joining. It was great. So if you want to ask her anything personally, or you just want to have another, little more word with her about anything, any doubts or anything, you just go over to her Instagram profile. And if there's anyone who's new to Workafella, do check out our page as well. Hit a like and just, you can see all the other stuff, the other conversations that we've had with all our achievers.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Have a good night.
Thank you so much. Bye. Good night.